Alright, I'm Marcela Cordova, and I'm the high school science teacher in Penasco. And I'm going to go over 3 different instructional strategies that 2 of them I use regularly, and 1 of them I would like to start using more in my classroom. And really how we focus it in on reading and how we can influence our students more using some of these strategies. As far as teaching strategies, there's a lot of different strategies that we use within our classrooms every day. They can be anything from your daily objectives to bell ringers to exit tickets to reading with an elbow partner. Pretty much anything you're doing within your classroom is some kind of teaching strategy that you're using to add structure and to basically create processes that will put your students on a level of understanding and basically helping with classroom management along with their learning. One of the teaching strategies that I don't use but that I would like to start using, some of my kids hate them, some of my kids love them, but I've never used them in my class before, are Cornell notes. Even people that I went to college with absolutely swear by Cornell notes. One of the ways that you actually start with your Cornell notes is you take a piece of paper and you divide it into 3 pieces lengthwise. So then you have 3 different sections. At the top of the paper, you will have your name, date, class period, things like that, depending on what level you're teaching. You can use this on a high school level, you can use it on an elementary school level. Like I said, I had friends who used it on a college level. And then at the top of most papers, a lot of the lower level instructors don't actually do this, but at the top you will also have an essential question. And then in the middle, pardon my smartboard, it kind of does its own thing. In the middle of your paper, you're actually going to have your notes. This is where your notes portion of your Cornell notes actually takes place. On the left, within those 3 folded sides that I showed you, on the left side is going to be basically your questions. They're going to be questions that you would be answering, questions that you would be thinking about. On the right is where you would be putting your answers to those questions. And then on a high school level, like I said, a lot of times on primary level, this is another one of those things that they may not use. But on a high school level, this is one of those things where you would be putting a full summary. If I actually started using these in my class, I would ask my kids to actually use a race rubric for this, just because it would actually include more than just a simple 2 to 3 question answer. Okay, so this is kind of a template that I found that I think would be used more on a primary level. You've got topic and objective up at the top and everything, and it does have an essential question, but what I noticed here that I really like that I would actually prefer to use on a primary level would be more so than giving them lines to answer questions using sentences. This would be more so for like drawing pictures and answering questions in that sense. This is one that I found that I would probably do on a high school level. It actually has a lot more space for a summary. For my upper division courses, I would probably want a bigger summary than what this actually has, just because I want to know that they know the information. I don't want to know that they can just spit back things that they heard. So I really make my kids get a lot more into a deeper DOK than what most people prefer. But as far as this is concerned, you'll see you'll actually have questions set up over here. You still have your essential question, and you do have places to write your notes that will actually go along with these essential questions, or the additional questions on top of your essential question that would be going along with that. Here is an example of Cornell notes. You don't necessarily have to have a template in order to do Cornell notes. So as far as most of these notes, you can do it on regular notebook paper. They can do it within their notebooks. These actually work very great for interactive notebooks if you or your district do interactive notebooks. And this one does not have an essential question, but you can see like where they write the question on the side and where they actually give an answer next to it, okay? One of the other strategies that I use in class, I do it different than most people do because I do it on a high school level, so I expect more out of it than most people do. This works absolutely great with your freshmen. It helps me get to know my freshmen better, and on top of that, it actually helps them get a feel for high school work and expectations that are actually that they're actually held to on the level in my class anyway. So it's really basic, read, talk, write. There's a lot of different strategies for basically the same thing. They all have different names. But reading, they can either read by themselves, they can basically read alone, silently, or they can be done in a group. And then after they read, they talk about it with somebody. Whether they talk about it in like a full class discussion, or whether they would be talking about it in like a smaller group discussion where there was 2 to 4 of them, or it could just be a shoulder part. You know, they read for 10 minutes, and then you have them discuss what they read with the person next to them, and then of course write a summary. In my class, I usually have them write a race summary depending on how long their material was that they read, but it can also be like just notes in a notebook that they decided to basically sum up what they read for just regular notes that they can actually study later. The really nice thing about this is that lower level readers, they will actually get the same information that a lot of your higher level readers will get. A lot of times we have special ed students who do not read on the same level as everybody else in their class, and there are some words that they may not understand and some vocabulary that they may have issues with. So if they're reading, if they can't read the material, the nice thing about it is they can have somebody else read it to them. Like if you're doing, I prefer to do this in a group. So if you break them into 3 to 4 kids, 3 is actually better because you have 1 reading, you have 1 interpreting what was read, and you have 1 writing. So like if you've got one of your special ed kids who can't read very well and can't write very well, it's actually really good to put them in the middle as the interpreter. So it actually gets lower level readers to comprehend and understand everything on the same level. And having a group discussion when you actually have all 3 of those kids working together and actually talking about these things, it makes them think even deeper. So I like how it increases the DOK. Some of the cons about using read, talk, write is if you don't have proper classroom management, it's just going to turn into a circus. Okay. Basically, your kids are going to sit there and they're going to pretend like they're reading, and then they're going to pretend like they're discussing everything, and then they're not going to have any notes to show for it later because they're going to sit there and kind of screw around. So that's something that you really have to pay attention to. If you don't have good classroom management, you may not want to use this. And then the other thing that I don't really like about it is that some kids will kind of steal somebody else's thoughts and they kind of pass off their stuff as something else. And that's one of the things that I don't really like about putting kids into group work, is because you have that one kid that's just going to say what they said, and it's not going to be their same thought. So that's something to take into consideration. Now, this is my favorite, experiential learning. I don't believe that there is any kind of learning that works better than making somebody do it themselves. If you have somebody who is actually doing what you want them to know, they're going to learn it so much better, okay? This is what I swear by, especially as a science teacher. I was not a student who was like, here, take a book, learn it. So as far as me teaching science, I try to keep everything hands-on. Science is one of those cool subjects where you can get away with that, but I mean, I absolutely swear by this. Okay, as far as experiential learning, this is basically just hands-on work. If you're not getting your hands dirty, you're not learning anything. I mean, this is something that I've used in 4-H programs for years. This is something that I've always done growing up. You know, my dad didn't tell me how to dig a ditch. He handed me the shovel, said, here, figure it out. You know, like it's, if you're not getting your hands dirty, you're not actually learning anything. And I swear by that in just about every subject, okay? So the more that you make hands-on, the more that your students are going to understand. I don't care if it's math, I don't care if it's English. If you actually make them do it, they're going to pick it up a whole lot more than you standing up here and telling them this, you know. I actually read a paper at the beginning of the semester about how they're using this for 4-H training in California. But really, if you look at how we train our 4-H volunteers, this is what we do countrywide. We have 4-H volunteers who go in, we teach them how to shear a lamb. We're like, okay, now you're going to teach this youth how to shear a lamb. You don't know how to sew? Here's an arts and crafts project. We're going to teach this to you. You're going to teach it to the kids. This is basically the entire training that we use for 4-H all the time. And as far as our 4-H training, constantly, this is what I use in the classroom. And that's because I've spent 20 years in the 4-H program itself. So there's that. The nice thing about experiential learning is that you can literally use this at any level. You can use it elementary level, high school level. It just depends on how hands-on you want them to get. On a high school level, my kids are very, very familiar with a lot of instruments. We use TDS meters, we use pH meters. This is stuff that we use in the field constantly. My kids are part of bigger studies than just a local high school science fair. My kids actually do water quality testing that is with RiverSource Incorporated that occurs all over the state. So as far as experiential learning and working with professionals, this, if you have students who have no interest in going to college, this is the way to get them to learn. This is the way to get them to focus. I absolutely swear by it. Anything that you do in the field, I mean, literally just taking a shovel, you pick up a shovel and you tell the kids we're going outside, and if you don't tell them what you're doing, it kind of lets that curiosity hang. But they think you're going to go outside and you're either going to make them work, or you're just going to go outside and mess around. So it's kind of a good way to mix education into curiosity and fun and everything else. Now, as far as the reading side on your experiential learning, what I really like about this is that we use a lot of this for safety info, okay? Before we go out into the field, they need to know not to hit somebody over the head with the shovel. Before we go out into the field, they need to know basically not to drink the chemicals out of the water test kit. So, as far as safety information, we have to make sure that these kids can read and that they are understanding what they're reading when we talk about safety info. Now, when we get back from the field, they have to be able to read the data. Whether we're putting it into charts, whether we're putting it into tables, whether we're just handwriting field notes into quick sentences, or whether we're making charts and graphs, these kids have to be able to read this information. So in order for hands-on learning to work, you do have to have some kind of data that actually goes along and extends with it. Okay, now, as far as all of these learning strategies, this is what I use in my classroom. Like I said, Cornell is the only thing that I don't use, but I would like to try it. And basically, these strategies are what make you learn, okay? Everything you do in class is a strategy. You have to use what you have. I come from a very small district. We don't have very much, but we use what we can. And overall, any strategy you use, make it fun. If it's not fun for the kids, then it's not gonna be worth doing, because the kids aren't gonna get anything